Dr. Hill,
Yes.
I'm surprised you gave me 100.
Oh, well, you earned it. Did you do all, I mean, when you do all the things I tell you to do?
Yeah, you're right.
I also thought I had it set that you couldn't see your grade until everyone's is graded, but apparently that is incorrect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that, I guess. Hmm. Oh well, I guess it's too late now. Most of them are graded. I think I only have like 10 more, less than 10 to grade from both sections. So it should be done later today or Saturday. That's what I'm thinking.
Oh shit, I got
Are you,
100 too.
are you gonna send them out with like your comments or whatever?
Can you not see the comments?
I didn't try to look.
If you got 100, then you don't have comments.
So there was nothing you said on mine.
Yeah, I only like put comments if I took points off.
Oh,
So you could see like why you lost points.
okay.
But I thought I had it set that you could see the comments, but I can double check that. Okay, so Friday surprise. Today's a super short class. So all we're doing today is going over two gang programs. We're going to go over the GREAT program and Cure Violence, and then we're going to watch a short video on Cure Violence. And I double checked this morning, and the other class could hear the YouTube video. I had to get my husband to help me because I couldn't figure that shit out. Anyways, he was able to help, so we'll be able to do that. So today is quiz day. So everybody needs to take their quiz before 10:50 p.m. today. And since class ends a little early, just a reminder, the quiz will not be available until 10:50 a.m. So don't try to take the quiz until like the class would essentially be over. And then you have until 10:50 p.m. to take it. Let's see. Today, we've got Oz, you're playing, Sam Smith and Jeremy Walker. I see Jeremy. Do we have Sam today? We do not have Sam, but he did respond to my email. So Oz, Jeremy, and if Sam shows up at some point, you guys don't take the quiz today, and you'll do it Jeopardy style on Monday morning, okay? All right. Does anybody have any questions for me before we begin? No questions? Oh, okay. Let's go over some gang prevention programs. Okay. All right, so we are going to start with the GREAT program. So if any of you guys ever experienced DARE or know what DARE is, the GREAT program is basically DARE, but for trying to get kids not to join gangs instead of trying to get kids not to do drugs. So basically, GREAT stands for Gang Resistance Education and Training Program, and it's a primary gang and delinquency program that is delivered by law enforcement officers in a school setting. So just like DARE, where the law enforcement officers would come into your school and teach you why you shouldn't do drugs, this is the same thing. The law enforcement officers come into your school and teach you not to join gangs. So the original program was developed in 1991 by Phoenix area law enforcement, and it was quickly adopted by agencies throughout the U.S. The first GREAT program started with 9 lecture-based lessons that was taught primarily in middle school grades, but sometimes they would go as low as elementary school and occasionally go a little bit into high school, but it was geared for middle school kids. Unfortunately, 10 years later in 2001, there was a national evaluation of the GREAT program, and they found no differences between the kids that went through the GREAT program and a carefully matched sample of kids that did not in terms of key behavioral outcomes. So they didn't see any differences in terms of involvement in gangs and delinquent behavior. So because of that, they revamped their curriculum to try to make changes to make it so that it was an effective program. So based in part of those findings that showed that it didn't have any improvement, the program underwent this critical review and they added 4 more lessons. So now the program is 13 lessons aimed at teaching the youth life skills, things like communication and refusal skills, conflict resolution, anger management techniques, a bunch of things that these kids would need as they get a little bit older and they start feeling pressure to join gangs. So the 2 main goals of the GREAT program are to help youth avoid gang membership, violence, and criminal activity. And secondly, what they were hoping to do is to help the youth develop a positive relationship with law enforcement. So as we saw, I think on Monday when we were talking about the divide that was created between law enforcement and the community because of these gang units, this is one way that law enforcement officers are trying to sort of incorporate community policing to sort of heal that divide so that the kids in the neighborhood can get a positive experience with law enforcement instead of just the gang unit, like constantly harassing them or their parents kicking down doors, things like this. They were hoping to, this is sort of an aspect of community policing to try to heal that divide. So the new program, the one with the 13 lessons, was implemented in 2003. And in 2006, the University of Missouri St. Louis got the funding necessary to conduct a 6-year evaluation of this revised program. So let's look at what that evaluation found. So this was a cross-sectional and a longitudinal study. So cross-sectional is just a snapshot in time, and longitudinally what they did was they had a group of people in the GREAT program and a group of people not in the GREAT program, and they followed them for 6 years to see how this program affected them. So the first thing to note about this is that they did find a difference in gang membership. The ones that were in the GREAT program were less likely to join a gang than the ones that weren't, but the finding or the effect size was so small it didn't reach statistical significance, meaning it just wasn't large enough that the researchers felt confident in saying, if you in fact implement this program, then you're definitely going to see these findings. So other things that the evaluation showed, they did find significant differences: more positive attitudes towards the police, fewer positive attitudes towards the gangs. They were using the refusal skills that they were being taught in the lessons, and because of that, they were able to resist peer pressure to join a gang more readily. Again, lower rates of gang membership, but it wasn't significant. And then they found lower rates of self-reported delinquency. So this is not the most reliable statistic. If you want to know for sure if the kids aren't committing more crimes, you want to look at official records, but in this instance, they didn't. So they were giving them surveys, quarterly or yearly or whatever for the 6 years they were following them. And the ones that were in the GREAT program were not reporting higher levels of delinquency than the ones that were not in the program. So overall, this is much better than the first one. And this big one right here, this is, I think, the main reason why this program is still around today. Like I said, the kids in this neighborhood really need something besides the negative influence of law enforcement, and this program is able to give them more positive attitudes towards the police. When it comes to lower rates of gang membership, that's really tough to get at, especially with one program. So those of you that did your policy brief and dealt with any sort of juvenile sample size or juvenile samples realize that it's really hard to get juveniles to do anything really. Any sort of rehabilitation program aimed at adults always works better than juveniles. I mean, I could see that. I remember what I was like when I was 13, 14, 15. Nobody could tell me anything. So I'm not really surprised that we're not finding that one law enforcement program is able to get these kids from joining gangs. So even though they found slightly lower rates, it just wasn't enough for them to say you're emphatically going to see this. But this is really great news right here, that they are able to influence their minds in terms of seeing the police in a positive light. All right, questions about the GREAT program? All righty, let's talk about Cure Violence. So this is another gang program. And just really quickly, this program has 2 names. When it first started, it was called Ceasefire, and then I think 4 or 5 years after it started, they switched over to calling it Cure Violence. So when we actually watch the video on this program today, they're calling it Ceasefire. So just make sure that you realize it's the same program. It just underwent a name change. So it started in Chicago. So it's a Chicago-based violence prevention program, and it's focused on affecting risky behaviors by a small number of carefully selected members in the community, people that either have a high chance of being shot in a gang shooting or being a shooter involved in some sort of gang altercation. So the program utilizes what they call violence interrupters, who are a group of former gang members. And these guys, what their whole job is to mediate conflicts between rival gangs and get them to stop retaliatory violence. So, for instance, if we have a blood shoot a Crip, the violence interrupters will disseminate, and some of them will go talk to the Bloods, some will go talk to the Crips, and they try to get them to stand down. Because if not, if a Blood shoots a Crip is going to retaliate and shoot a Blood, who's then going to retaliate and shoot a Crip, and we have this sort of retaliatory back and forth violence. So what they're trying to do is stop that retaliatory violence by sending mediators out to mediate the conflict and get them to stand down. So that's one aspect of Cure Violence. What they're also trying to do is trying to get kids from joining gangs. So they have a group of outreach workers who counsel young clients who are at high risk of joining a gang, and they're trying to connect them to services to get them to avoid joining gangs. And the last thing that they have is they get the community involved so that, there we go. They get the community involved to try to change the operating norms regarding violence. So what they're trying to do is this strong public education campaign to instill the message in the community members that violence is not acceptable, not approved of even by peers. So the Cure Violence works on 3 levels. They have the violence interrupters who are trying to get the retaliatory violence stopped by sending out people in the community and getting them to mediate conflicts between the gangs. They're trying to provide on the spot alternatives to violence through these mediators, and they're also trying to get the outreach workers to get kids not to join gangs. And what they're hoping to do is to change the operating norms regarding violence, both in the wider community and among the clients. And they're trying to get the entire community involved in this. So when you watch the video, you'll see a range of people involved in the community that are involved in Cure Violence. Like, I think there's like a local pastor that's involved in it. The school system is involved in it. And when you watch the video, you'll see that there are sort of murals all over the neighborhoods. And they realize changing the operating norms regarding violence is not something that's going to happen over time. So they're trying to get the whole community involved in this, and they're hoping to strengthen the community so that they have the capacity to exercise informal social control to get these kids to stop using violence to settle their scores. So again, this is sort of trying to deal with that concern that we talked about earlier in the week. So it cannot just be the police that are spreading the message that violence isn't the answer. It has to come from other people. Other people share the problem. So having a group of community members and former gang members being able to sort of spread this message is the way that they're trying to sort of heal these communities. All right, so what I'm going to do is share the screen over here, and we're going to watch the video. Does anybody have any questions before we start this video? No questions? Okay. Okay.
Our work is designed to look at violence.
You guys can hear that, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
In terms of its contagious nature. That is to say, how one event leads to another and how people learn this from each other.
When I met Dr. Gary Slutkin in 1999, he started talking to me about how violence is an epidemic and it should be treated as a public health issue. And those were kind of foreign words to me back then because I had never heard anybody talk about violence in that type of manner.
The way the C Spire Chicago model works is by recruiting and training a new cadre of workers called violence interrupters.
I was a former gang leader. I came home almost 10 years ago, and I decided to be a part of the solution and not the problem.
In order to prevent a homicide or a shooting, you have to have the ability to intercept whispers. We work on the community level by hiring street people, people that have a background from the street life, and they become professionally trained, credible messengers that can get out there and make sense of the madness on ground zero.
When we talk to the young guys, we try to let them know that you don't have to be 40 to get it. You can get it while you're 18, 19. It's sad when you know in your heart the only thing that can come out of this is death or prison. So, they consider us to be credible messengers because we've been there, done that, and we try to pass that along to them.
About a year and a half ago here in the city of Chicago, a 14-year-old kid was shot and paralyzed on Chicago Avenue in the Austin community on the far west side of Chicago. He was shot while coming out of a grocery store on his way to school.
C Spire received a call on that first day. T.O. Hardeman talked to one side, I talked to the other side. We tried to get them to stand down. Now you have to remember, it's a 35-year historical differences between these two gangs. We mediated the conflict and we got both sides to stand down. We got them to agree, you stay on your side of the street, we stay on our side of the street. And that's about where it is right now. No one's been shot since then.
Carl Bell has what you call street credibility. Carl Bell has the understanding that violence is not going to get you anywhere. He lost two brothers because they were shot and killed while he was incarcerated here in the state of Illinois. So he was able to share his personal testimony with these guys, and he made a breakthrough.
When you stop a situation where you have two opposing gangs not willing to bend, and there's no telling how many lives were saved, but to just get the guys to stop and to stop shooting is a feeling of fulfillment, one that you can't describe.
We work directly with the community to change the norms, if norms are violent in this neighborhood. So we work at 3 levels: detecting and interrupting events, behavior change among the highest risk, and changing the norms for the long haul among the community as a whole.
You have a lot of people that live here that basically live below the poverty level, which creates a dynamic in this community of individuals trying to find a way to create wealth and find a way out.
The gang life poses a challenge to all educators, not just in the Austin community. It's very enticing to some of our students that want to feel part of something. And what ends up happening is you end up competing with what's going on outside of your school. Kids have a lot that they come with before they even enter our school doors, and they need advocates. C Spire has been very important as far as what we do here at Spencer, trying to be a pillar of the neighborhood and pillar of the community. They are assuring that our students are having a safe passage to school and are able to get their education.
I believe C Spire has made a great contribution to our community because they recruit as interrupters those who were once involved in this negative activity. And their ability to reach those young men is based on they think the same. So they have the opportunity to ask the right questions and tap into areas where the police would never be able to tap into.
Law enforcement takes the lead, making a community safer, but we all have to do something. The C Spire Chicago model is designed to help the community do its share.
The reason I know that C Spire works is because I see communities coming back to life. I see young people out playing on the blocks. They're not afraid that somebody's going to come and shoot the block up because they know that C Spire is out there. They know that the Chicago Police Department, they're out in the community. The presence is strong, and we're getting results.
Ceasefire has made huge changes in the community. It's allowed community members to communicate with one another, whether if they're in a gang or not. It kind of puts everyone on the same page.
I'm very optimistic about the future of our community.
If you can change the way you think about violence, then you can change the next person and the next person. And next thing you know, when a person pulls a gun out, you're going to have like thousands of people up in his face saying, look, what are you doing? We don't even pull out guns anymore. That's a thing of the past. That's the reason why I know ceasefire works.
Okay, so that is ceasefire or cure violence. So the last thing we're going to go over today is the effectiveness of that particular program. So let me put the lecture back up. Okay, so there have been a lot of studies that have been done on cure violence or ceasefire. Actually, if you're interested, I imagine that you're not, but should you be interested, this link right here takes you to all the studies that they have done on this. This program is pretty prevalent in the U.S. It's across several cities. It's also in several U.S. and British territories as well. So when you go to, if you go to that link, you can literally click on the cities and see how many evaluations have been done on that. But we're just going to look at one of the studies. And so what they did was they picked 14 sites, 7 of which they implemented cure violence, and 7 they left them alone, and then they were able to compare. And what they saw was in the 7 cities where they had cure violence, 4 out of that 7 had statistically significant declines in actual shootings and attempted shootings. So we saw a 17% decline in actual shootings and a 24% decline in attempted shootings. They also went through the neighborhoods and talked to the residents to ask them how they felt about the neighborhood. And in 6 out of the 7 neighborhoods where they had cure violence, the residents said that the neighborhoods were noticeably safer. They felt a lot safer. And then they looked at homicides within and among gangs. So homicides within gangs means there's some sort of squabble or conflict between gang members of the same gang, and they'll take it out on each other with violence. Homicide among gangs is the retaliatory shootings like we were talking about. So like a blood shoots a Crip will then shoot a blood, and it goes round and around we go. So in 2 out of the 7 sites, they saw a decrease in homicide density. 4 out of the 7, they saw a decrease in reciprocal killings. And in 3 out of the 7 sites, they saw a decrease in the average gang involvement in homicides. So these are pretty impressive numbers. I know we're not seeing, 7 out of 7. But curing a gang problem is a pretty difficult undertaking. So I think this is the key. The gang units need to be in these neighborhoods, but they cannot do this alone. They need the community to help them, and this is one way that the community can help them. So implementing programs like the GREAT program to sort of give a positive light with law enforcement, and then getting the community to share that message that violence isn't the answer through programs like Cure Violence, I think is really the key to being able to stop or to significantly reduce gang problems in these low-income neighborhoods. But like I said, the gang units cannot do it themselves, and the records show that. I mean, we have seen we have more than 360 gang units nationwide for the last 2 or 3 decades, and we have not seen a significant drop. So we need to do something different. So I think this is the way to do it. Okay, do we have any questions about this? Does everybody have a policy implication for their quiz today? Oz, do you have a question?
Yeah. So the policy for this one would be implementing cure violence to reduce gang violence, I guess.
Yeah, that one would work. You could also use the GREAT program. I just wouldn't recommend it to reduce gang membership since it wasn't significant. But you could use the GREAT program for any of these other things right here. If you're going to say delinquency, make sure you say self-reported, because there is a difference. You could also, some of the other findings, remember, these didn't have empirical evaluation, so I wouldn't focus on separation and isolation. But what we did see, you could talk about ecological contamination. That has been proven multiple times You could talk about how no reduction in gang activity from the gang units. That's also been proven. You could talk about, it's not just the Duran study that showed that the gang units were creating this divide between law enforcement and the community. So I think the easiest ones to focus on, the most straightforward ones, are the GREAT program effectiveness and the cure violence effectiveness. But there are a few others above. Other questions? Okay, like I said, super short class today. Just remember the quiz will not be available until 10:50, so don't try to take it just yet. And all of the policy briefs should be graded by Monday at the absolute latest. Like I said, I only have about 10 more from both of the sections to grade. If you have any questions, let me know. We just have one more lecture left, and then the final exam. I've already submitted, or I've already put the study guide up on SitLearn. So I'm happy to edit your study guide just like the midterm. But again, it's got to be Zoom. I'm not just going to do it by email. So same thing goes. If a couple of you want to work on it together and then we can do like a group Zoom, that's totally fine as well. So if you want to start filling that out and schedule a time with me, I'm happy to go through those for you. Okay. Any questions for me? All right.
Dr. Hill.
Oh, yes. Who am I talking
When would you, Zach?
Oh.
When would you be available to go over that study guide? I already have mine completed.
So, well, do you maybe want to wait until the last lecture? How are you going to know what to put in for the last lecture?
I'm super smart.
Okay.
I figured that shit out.
Okay. Why don't we wait until then so that we don't have to meet twice for that. Let's see. So hold on. What is today? Today is this, Jesus Christ, I can't remember. Today is the 17th. So we'll be working the next lecture. So do you want to maybe shoot me an email, but I'm thinking like the end of next week. That way you'll have time to fill it out for the rest of the lecture, and I can look at the study guide all in one. But I think final exams don't begin until the following week, right? I don't remember.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it's like super late April, early May. I know my last final is like May 5th or something like that. So I'm thinking late next week. But I mean, we're all fucking stuck at home, so I'm pretty open. Just shoot me an email and we'll schedule a time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from you guys? Okay. Well, I know Friday's lost a little bit of its pizzazz, but happy Friday. I'll see you guys on Monday. Okay.